Accountability is what you owe to yourself. Responsibility, that's what you owe to everybody else. Hey, welcome in tonight. Glad you joined us. If you'd do us a favor and hit that subscribe button down below, that really helps us out. And we can't tell you how much we appreciate that you would even consider subscribing to our channel. We're just thankful you're here. Hope you enjoy it. Tonight, we're talking about responsibility. Hey, Sean, what do you tell people when they would ask you, what is responsibility?
Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head. Responsibility is how you deal with others, how you delegate, how you oversee, how you respond to. It's dealing with other people, where accountability is internal. Responsibility would be external. It's your surroundings and everything around you.
Do you think it's
including you, but not just you?
Do you think it's kind of expectations? Is that something that responsibility? You know, the people around you, the people you meet with daily or see daily, weekly. You have something to fulfill, and that's your responsibility. I don't know if that's a good definition of it or not.
Well, it's funny you asked for the definition. So
you got another definition for us this week.
In preparing for this, because at the very beginning there, you said accountability and responsibility are very closely related, and they are. I would call them very close first cousins. So I looked this up today. I went to Search Assist, and this is what it spit out. Accountability refers to owning the outcomes of actions and being answerable for results, while responsibility involves managing specific tasks or duties assigned to another person other than you. Understanding these differences is crucial for effective teamwork and even more crucial for effective leadership. I thought that was direct and to the point, and kind of answered the question as far as, what they are when it comes to responsibility. And here's the thing is, and I'm going to use this as a really, really small example real fast about responsibility. You had said something to me recently about your son. And he's obviously, we talked about him before. If you don't know, he's in the Marine Corps. And everybody in a branch of the service, but we're going to talk about the Corps here, from the E1 all the way to the O10, they have a role, they have a responsibility, they have an accountability. So everybody is accountable for yourself, yes. But if you're in a, we'll just say in a combat zone, and you're an E4, and you have 2 E3s, 2 E2s, and 2 E1s, and you have an O2 over you. Well, say he gets killed. Now you're responsible for, say you lose your life. Now it falls to the E4, and so forth and so on. So, responsibility is everybody has a role, and everybody is responsible for something other than self, whether it's the team you're around, whether it's if you're the boss, whether if you're married, everybody has a responsibility of something. So it's some people may call it a burden. I don't call it a burden. I call it actually a gift. And we'll later on in the podcast, we'll get to exactly where that gift come from.
Sean sent me a article that was talking about accountability versus responsibility. And there was something in there that was actually very pinpoint to what some of the things I used to do in my career, and that was large events. And it described accountability and responsibility as in roles for people over a large event. But let's say you are working for somebody, and the idea comes up that you're going to do a major fundraiser for whatever organization you're working for. And part of this fundraiser is, let's say, I don't know, 500 people coming to a sit down dinner, special speakers, special awards ceremony, some entertainment, and all these different things have to get done. Well, the way this article was describing this using that scenario was that the person who is in charge of everything is the one accountable. But each one of the people that do a job to take care of all those things are the ones responsible. And that every event, if you will, or everything in life has to have somebody who is accountable. That person is the point person. So it was really clear how it defined this as if you were the point person, if you were the one being accountable, you weren't doing the work. You weren't making the things for the tables. You weren't booking the entertainment. You weren't putting together the awards. You weren't, doing the meal planning. But what it was the person accountable was responsible for all that. And the people doing those individual jobs were responsible for their part of that. So I think if we start out from that standpoint, I think that's a good definition of kind of what we're talking about here between accountability and responsibility.
Yes.
How would you put that, Sean, from that definition? What is something that you dealt with in your life that kind of you had to find out either afterwards it started or during it, and I'm not talking about event, but where in your life did you go, okay, wow, I am responsible for something that I may not have been ready for, but I am responsible for it?
When I became supervisory management staff, I knew my job and I knew my guys' jobs because I did their job for, a decade and a half. So I knew what their responsibilities that they had to do their job for the population was. But what I had to learn when I became the supervisory management staff is what my responsibility was for them, because I had never been at that level. So, okay, what am I responsible to give them? Like, what do I have to do on the daily to make sure they have what they need to do their job? And I learned responsibility not only runs downhill, but it also runs uphill. So being that middle person, well, I was responsible for the people under me to make sure that they had the logistical things they needed. But I had people above me. Well, I was responsible to them to make sure that they had what they needed to basically give me what I needed logistically to give my guys what they needed logistically. So I learned the responsibility meter went forward and reverse, or up and down, however you want to look at it.
Yeah, I was trying to think of this in terms of everyday life. And I think if you think of it in the family situation, as dads, as men, we have a responsibility. And each man may have a different responsibility. That's whatever you and your wife have discussed and how you've laid it out. And, if you're a married man and, you have laid it out over the years of, okay, what is it that I do? What is it that she does? What is it we do together? So that's kind of laid out. If you're newly married, you haven't laid that out yet. And that's a tough thing because you have to figure out where does that responsibility lie to each other? Where does that responsibility lie individually? And it is a give and take all the way through the, I would say for me, when I was newly married, it was probably a good couple of years before we kind of figured that out. And I don't know if you ever figure it out because I think things still come up later in life. So I bring that up to say I'm trying to put the responsibility in a daily thing as well. Uh, I've experienced it in my work life, but experiencing it in my personal life is really not that much different because it's the same process. You know, it is something that may be expected of you, but also something you may expect of yourself. It may be something that others look to you to be you to take care of. It also may be something you look at to take care of. So it's kind of weird. And I'm glad you said that, you know, it goes up the ladder and down the ladder because we talked a little bit in that last show about accountability, that accountability is the same way, that it goes up and down. And if you're not getting accountability from up top, then the lower people are never going to have accountability.
Right.
And if the accountability is not coming from the bottom, well, then the top person's probably not doing what they need to do to have that person feel accountable. So I think responsibility is similar. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I've got in my own personal life. Now, some people could say, well, you're holding yourself accountable. And I couldn't argue that point. But I'm gonna talk about something that I know that's near and dear to me, and I know it's near and dear to you too, is health. I know I have factors in my genetic makeup for my families that I'm kind of predestined for X, Y, and Z based on it has a very distinct history in my families of this particular ailment happen, which is heart disease. That's what it is, and on both sides. So, I mean, I'm kind of a workout freak and kind of a health nut and things like that. But there's nothing wrong with a good piece of chocolate every once in a while, though. But
I noticed how he said that really quiet so his wife wouldn't hear if she walked in.
But yes, I'm holding myself accountable by doing those things, but I also feel responsible because I have a wife. You just mentioned her. I have a wife. I kind of like her, so I want to be around her for, a few more years. And I got a lot of things I'm doing, so I take it upon myself as responsibility to do what I know I need to do to be around for her as we grow old together, as my children, as we have grandkids. So there's a responsibility there that, hey, yeah, you're holding yourself account, which is accountability. That's great. But I'm also responsible for her because I want her to be able to live life and my kid, my grandkids come over to my house and me be able to, throw them around out there on the dirt and smash their heads whenever I feel like it. And so I have to take it upon myself to be responsible enough to do what I need to do for that too. So family is, and is very, when you brought that up, I got that in my mind. Family is very, very big. We think of accountability and responsibility most of the time with, our careers, our jobs, but family is first and foremost where, honestly, the first cousins, you should see both of them in your family more so than you see them anywhere else. So I'm glad you brought that up.
A lot of times we talk about things. We bring up work scenarios or we bring up scenarios of groups of guys together, and other times when we bring up family things. But even though it's really work related, it's just life related because being responsible, man, people expect you to be responsible. They don't. I'll use myself as an example. I don't do well with people that aren't responsible for them, for what they do, for what they partake in, how they partake in it. I just don't do good around people like that. And it's not that I'm overly responsible or I'm better. I have a certain standard for myself that I have to live up to. And I expect the people around me to do the same. And I know there's times we just don't feel like being responsible. I get that. That's life. We all have those days. But I think in general, I don't like to be around people who do not see themselves as having some responsibility for anything in their life. And there are some people like that. They blame everybody else for anything going on in their life. If it's good, they did it. If it's bad, it's somebody else that did it. And I just don't look at life that way. I'm responsible for what I do. I'm responsible for how I act. And I'm not saying I haven't acted up or that I've always been responsible. I've made plenty of mistakes. There are skeletons in my closet I'm not willing to share. But in general, I do try my best to be responsible. And I just really struggle being around people that don't.
When I was growing up, my grandfather, I guess the way he put responsibility is everybody has to pull their own weight. And that's what he meant is, on the daily task, my grandparents we had they had four grandkids that they were kind of overseeing. So, I mean, we had our daily tasks around the house. I mean, it just had to get done. I mean, you had the dishes, you had the food, you had, the chores outside, you had the animals, you had the garden, you had, whatever. Yeah, we had all that stuff. So it had to get done every single day. So we were all assigned a task. We were responsible for that task. And when it didn't get done, I know in 2026, I know this is a wordy dirt in 2026, but there was actually a consequence for it not getting done. And what it was is it was teaching us, hey, you were given a task, you were responsible for that task, and you either A, did or B, didn't get it done. And if you didn't get it done in the allotted time, there's a consequence. Well, there's also a consequence if you did get it done, which is it was done. The person, either my mama or my granddaddy, looked at me and said, hey, appreciate doing that. And they really, truly meant, hey, appreciate doing that. Or if you didn't get it done, it was, hey, come here. I'm about to jack you up. I mean, it's a lesson. And you're going on, me and you are real close to going on, decade 6. It's the same lessons today. Nothing's
Absolutely.
changed. It's the same.
I read an article recently that was talking about part of the job of parents is to increase the responsibility you put on your kids. And by doing that, by the time they're ready to be an adult, they understand what responsibility is. They understand that there are certain things in life they have to do, brush your teeth, wash your hair, take care of your hygiene. You start way down there, and hopefully by the end of the time, you've got somebody who's a young man or a young woman who can be pretty responsible for taking care of everything in their life. Now, life's going to teach you a lot of lessons, so they're not completely ready. I wasn't. I don't know anybody who was completely ready at 16 to 18. But this article was talking about how many kids are not given responsibility now when they're young. And then all of a sudden they get to young adulthood and the parents are asking themselves, well, why can't they do anything? Why aren't they responsible for anything? Well, did you ever teach them? Did you ever start with, hey, your job is to brush your teeth tonight before you go to bed? I'm not going to come in and do it for you. I'm not going to remind you. That's your job. That's your responsibility. What's the next job? Okay, you're responsible for putting your clothes in a hamper. You're responsible for making your bed, and it just grows and grows and grows. I know there's a lot of parents who think that is maybe not right, that the parents should be doing all that stuff for them. I was not raised that way. Um, I was raised that I had to learn to be responsible for many things, probably a lot younger than some of the friends I had. And I didn't understand it, but I'm very thankful for it because it changed who I was as an adult. And I see some of those people I knew growing up, and responsibility is kind of a foreign concept to them still. They still don't quite understand what responsibility is.
Well, I'll go back to the analogy I started off with in the Marine Corps. So when you go through basic training, they teach you the most monotonous crap there is. And it's, 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks into it, you're like, what are we even doing here, man? I signed up to kill people, man. I watched Full Metal Jacket and I'm ready to go. And it's, you got a 6-inch fold on your bunk. Is it tucked in properly? Are your boots shined? Is your cover, which is, a hat, is your cover squared away? Do you, all these little things, are you in unison? And then after, it's so funny. So they tear you down with the mental side of just stupid, monotonous stuff. And then about week 5, week 6, all of a sudden, ding, the light goes on and you're like, oh. Because while they're doing this, you're also going through classes. You're also going through struggles together. You're getting taught things. And then that light comes on and you go, oh. This is about me taking responsibility for not only myself, but the man to my left and the man to my right, making sure I know my stuff to where if this guy goes down, I can pick him up and take him where he needs to go. It's about, and you start understanding the dynamic of what, and literally all they're doing is giving you a preview of this thing called life. That's literally all they're doing. In that, that 12, 13 weeks there, you're just giving you a little glimpse that, hey, when you leave here, when you leave the island or you leave San Diego and you go to the fleet, yes, you are going to be accountable for you, but you're also going to be responsible for all these people around you. It breeds teamwork. It breeds brotherhood. All of that things is what. And then when you get out and you go out here and you become a corrections officer or a director or a producer, you're like, oh, wait a minute. I remember those lessons that they taught to me in that mosquito-ridden island in South Carolina. And it's
well,
great.
I think that article is describing exactly what you're describing. It is, you raise kids to start out with those little things and it just builds and builds and builds. And I guess another way to think of it, I was trying to think of another example. And this takes the accountability and responsibility thing again, because they're so closely tied. If you think of a pro sports team, you have a coach who is totally accountable for that win and loss for the season. Okay. Mm-hmm. His or her job is based on what kind of success rate that team has. Yes. Now, the coach can't go out there and play. The coach can't do anything to help the team win on the field or on the court or wherever it is. It is the responsibility of the individual players to win the game. And they do it for each other. They do it for the coach. And it goes uphill. Now, the coach is doing everything he can to win for the players because they have success, in the pro sports, financial incentives and other things like that. But it's a back and forth thing. And while the coach has accountability to the team, he also has responsibility to the team to teach them things they may not know to play better. On the reverse side of that, the team needs to be accountable to the coach by being responsible of doing their individual jobs to win for the team.
Yes.
And that's that is the story of life. And if they're doing that in the military, that's what sports are doing. Academics are doing that. The same way with academics. If you have a kid that starts with, 2 + 2 is 4, and the next thing you know, they're moving into pre-algebra and algebra and, onto calculus and trig and statistics. And, they're just building on the last step. Every step's a step towards that, but they're taking responsibility to learn that first step to be able to succeed at the next step. And I think that's such a great analogy for life. We may not get everything right in life, but we have the responsibility to try to do better every day than we did the day before. And I think there's just a lot of people who, I'm not going to say a lot, there are people who do not understand that it is their responsibility to have a better day tomorrow than they had today.
Literally at the end of the day, when me and my wife, when we go to bed and we pray, and we pray every single night. This is just not something I'm just throwing out there. We literally pray every single night, and literally every single time, with the exception of in Jesus' name, amen. But before that, the very last thing I say is, I pray that tomorrow I'm a little bit better than I was today. And that's every single day. And that's what responsibility is okay, assess, game plan, institute, flush away the nonsense. And it just has to be that way every single day. And that breeds both accountability and responsibility, because you've been in situations, I've been in situations where you look at the person that's supposed to be accountable for everybody else, and you're like, I don't even know how this person remembers how to breathe. Like, I don't even know what they're doing. Like I think somebody's got to give them a script to breathe. And it's very hard to be around people like that. It's actually disheartening is what it really is. It's disheartening to see, and infuriating at the same time. And I'm sure there's some other adjectives I could add, but accountability and responsibility, they're hard. I mean, there's times where they can be really, really difficult. But that's part of it.
Well, I was told my whole life growing up, if it's easy, everybody would do it.
Yes.
Well, I guess Dad had a point on that one. Let me ask you this. You worked in a prison. You probably had, I am going to make an assumption here. You can correct me if I'm wrong. You probably dealt with a large population of people who didn't take responsibility for their actions, blamed other people for why they did what they did, and who caused them to be where they're at. How did you deal with that and with them? Because, yeah, you're in corrections, but you're also there to kind of get them through the process, get them through the years. And do you see guys in that situation? Do they get it? Do they turn it around? And what's it take?
In my experience, so I can only speak for myself. In my experience, 97% of the inmate population were lost in various ways. They were lost causes. 3% of the population throughout my career is, you could see accountability setting on the shoulder. You could see responsibility. You could see the understanding of knowing right from wrong, understanding that this is a consequence. There was an action, and there was an equal and opposite reaction. Prison being the reaction to your action. And what you did was, and my guys, and I learned this over, the first, 15 to 18 years of my career. And then, once I got people underneath me, then I could really, really train and teach them. And I would tell them to observe it. And after a while, that, my guys would come up to me and be like, that guy's, you might as well talk to a dill pickle. And that's about right. I mean, and then you could see guys that were seeking something. And then now it's your job to form that relationship of, okay, what is this guy looking for? And it was amazing. A lot of times these guys you would crack a door for them into their psyche, and man, they'd knock the door down. Next thing you know, this guy's he's wanting to participate in this program. He's wanting to do this. And all you did was crack the door for him. But what you did is you showed them a little bit of belief, and then they took that belief, and then they took that first cousin accountability and that second cousin responsibility, and then they meshed them. And then you saw it all the time.
What would motivate the guys? And we don't have any research for this. This is based on your experience only. So we're not even pretending that this is a research project. But the percentage of guys that never did understand responsibility, obviously they had things inside they had to do, whether they wanted to call it be responsible. There were certain protocols I'm sure they had to follow, even if it was walking down the line to go to chow, whatever. Was it just a habitual thing that got them to do those things? What was it? If they didn't really understand individual responsibility, or they didn't take any responsibility for anything they did, how did you, what were they doing to get through? I guess I ask this question because the people we come into our daily lives with, when we come across somebody who just doesn't feel responsible, I can walk away from them. I can get away from them, but you couldn't. Okay. You were there every day at your job. So what did you do to try to not enforce it, but encourage them to at least follow the rules, at least be responsible enough to do that? What did you find a trick? Was there something that you guys learned?
No, I mean, you had to take, within prisons, you have gangs and you have groups and you have things like that. But, I was never, I was brought up in a, and when I say brought up, I mean, I was trained by what would call the old guard, old heads, guys that, had been doing the job for years and years and years in rough spots. And they just knew, they knew human nature. Now they wasn't writing books coming out of Harvard, with some fancy smancy, whatever. But, they were in the mire and the muck for, 25, 30, 35 years, day in and day out. And those brainiacs coming out of Harvard, they ain't got a clue. So I learned from those guys, and I learned the lessons, and I listened, probably more so than I've ever listened to anybody else. I listened to those guys teach me how to interact with individuals that hate authority. And most of the people I interacted with, they hated authority. It didn't matter what authority. It didn't matter. They just hated it. So the ones that I dealt with that were just, it didn't matter if it was, when I started in 1993 or when I retired, they were just going to be a problem their entire lives because they were oppressed. Somebody owed them, their mama didn't feed them enough, whatever. Now, there was a large number of people that come from some very, just horrendous backgrounds, and it was a generational thing or it was a traumatic thing. And those people, there's a lot of people like that. But what I did was, based on what I learned, was the guys that wanted to get better, then you poured into them. But the guys that were just there, they were clicking days off. That's all they were doing. They were clicking days off. if they didn't follow the rules, you dealt with them appropriately, or whatever the case may be. But here's the crazy thing: most of them in there, even though they hated authority, they absolutely loved the same thing being done every day. They didn't like change. They liked that consistency. They didn't want you.
Count.
Yeah, they didn't want you to be a hard butt, but they didn't want you to be soft as cotton. They wanted you to just be, like a flat line, across the screen. They loved that, but yet they hated authority. It's hard to explain to people that have never been in the dynamic
Right.
in there. But
that's interesting. I think probably it's like, I'm just guessing it's part of that consistency. At least somebody is laying out some ground rules and saying, okay, you do this happens, basically.
Most powerful word in a prison.
What?
No.
Really?
It is.
Huh.
It is. It is. It is.
Just
it is,
somebody. Is it somebody holding the line?
It is the word that will garner you the most respect from the inmate population. Is no, and you have a reason, not just because I said so is not an answer.
Right.
No, and this is the reason why. 95% of the time in my entire career, they may be pissy about it and they may not like it, but they'll go, yes, sir.
Kind of reminds me of that Bible verse, and I can't recall where it's at. It basically, and I think this is pretty much verbatim, it says, let your yes be yes and your no be no, meaning say yes when you mean it and say no when you mean it. And, I can understand that consistency.
Very true.
Well, let me do this. So we've kind of talked about responsibility and the negative part of all the people who don't get it. And maybe that's a little unfair, but those are the people that stand out to me because I just have that expectation that people are going to be responsible. That's just the expectation I have from the people in my life and the people around me. And I haven't lived up to it 100% of the time, but I've got some people in my family or friend groups that they don't live up to it 50% of the time, but that's a different story. So what's it look like when a man gets this right? What does it look like to be a responsible man? I guess that's the question. What does it look like to be responsible?
Are you talking about from what you see in the mirror, or are you talking about from what people see when they look at you?
I think it's both, because I think if you can't see it in the mirror, nobody's going to be seeing it in you anyways.
Responsibility in the mirror to me is, did you do what you said you were going to do today? I'm not like a planner unless it's like a trip or something. I'm not really a planner for, in 2 weeks from now or anything like that, because that's just kind of how I've always been. I kind of I don't live day to day when it comes to certain things, but trying to be a better person, I do live day to day. If I look in the mirror and I say, hey man, today you were solid. Okay. Honest assessment. Hey man, you suck today. Honest assessment. Well, people are going to look at you the same exact way, but for the sake of what you're asking about, okay, well, what are the positives? Did you do everything you could to make self and team, whatever that team is made up of, whether it's your employees, whether it's your bosses, whether it's your wife, whether it's your children, whether it's your church family, whatever. Did you do your best today to make the people around you the best they could be and give them, if that is your place, to give them everything they needed to be successful? Like, for instance, as an example, if you get up in the morning time and, like, before you send your your 13-year-old daughter before you send her to school. You just rip her a new one for whatever. Did you do everything you could for the people around you to give them the best possible chance they had, logistically speaking, to do their thing today and do it good? Probably not. You probably just wrecked her day.
Well, you just made me think of a story of I had a guy that worked for me. One day he came in, he was just in a piss poor mood. And I asked him, I said, man, what's going on? He said, man, I jumped all over my daughter this morning. I said, about what? He said, the clothes she was wearing. I couldn't believe she was wearing those clothes to school. And I just jumped all over her and I made her go in and put some sweatpants on to wear to school. And I said, does she got other clothes? He said, that's why I feel so bad. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I was supposed to wash her clothes last night and I fell asleep and forgot about it. So, his lack of responsibility the night before caused him to react to what she was doing because he said she was basically down to the last set of clothes she had that wasn't appropriate to wear to school. And he jumped all over her. And then it wasn't until after she left for school on his way into work, he understood that he fell down on his responsibility the night before to wash the clothes that he said he would do. So it was that exact scenario you were just talking about.
Yeah.
And he felt terrible. I don't know what the outcome of it was, but that was a perfect example of what you said. Because that was a real life example right there. But isn't that why we should be responsible? Because if we're not responsible, there are repercussions down the line with the other people we come in contact with. And regardless of if our responsibilities involve something with them or something about them, when we don't live up to what we should and responsibilities we have, what's that do to the inner man? What do we start thinking? We start kicking ourselves in the butt. We start, man, I screwed up, man. Why did I do that? You get that kind of thing going in your head up here. And then you just perpetuate that all throughout your day. And either you're a jerk to all the people around you, or you're slipping on other things during the day because you're still thinking about the thing you screwed up on. So it's kind of self-perpetuating, I think, when we're not responsible for even the little things.
Well, let me ask you a question. Who talks to you more than anybody else?
My wife.
No, you do.
Well, yeah. I didn't count me. You're right.
But the voice in your head, you hear more of you than you hear anybody else. Well, what is the voice? If the voice in your head is speaking negatively about, fill in the blank, it doesn't matter what it is. If you're constantly talking negative to yourself, about other people, well, how in the world can you be responsible for anything or anybody else when you can't even be accountable to you because your self-talk is horrendous? Like you're sabotaging yourself before you even, never mind the person, you use yours as an example. Your wife laying next to you in your bed, never mind her. Like you've already sabotaged yourself.
Well, we'll make that number 2 of this. What's it do when a man gets it right? And that is, take care of your business.
Yes.
I think you said this recently. Fix your house. You can't fix anybody else's house till you fix yours. And yes. I think responsibility certainly falls under that. If you're not responsible, that's going to translate into problems for other people.
Yes.
Somehow, some way, I can't explain it in every scenario, but your lack of taking responsibility is going to put that responsibility on somebody else. And the man that's got it right is the one that's taking care of his personal responsibilities and not relying on other people to put on their list as their responsibility. I guess that'd be the best way to say it. A man, I wrote this down. A man who does the thing no one sees because it needs to be done. That's a biggie.
Yes.
And I think when a man's doing the right thing, if you were able to be a fly on the wall, you're going to see him do that over and over and over. And he's not going to seek credit for it. He's not going to look for attention for it. He just sees something that needs to be done and he just does it. Man, woman, child, it doesn't matter. But when somebody can identify something that needs to be done and just does it, to me, that's a super responsible person, because that tells me they don't have to have a bunch of horns blown every time they do something. They don't have to brag about it. They don't have to be rewarded for it. They just simply see a need. They're able to take care of it, so they just take care of it.
Great leaders. Notice I didn't say all leaders, because just simply because you're in the leader position doesn't mean you're any good at what you're actually supposed to be doing. Great leaders ooze both accountability and responsibility, because when people look at a great leader, they immediately think to themselves, that guy holds himself to a standard that is ridiculous. Like, you can tell. Also, that guy expects that standard as it goes this way. He expects that standard to be maintained all the way down from the 117th floor to the dude cleaning the toilet in the first floor. Pick a profession. I mean, literally, pick a great, you said earlier, great coach, a pastor that leads a big church, a corporate guy, whatever.
A guy that owns his own business and is just trying to get through it,
Or the husband with a wife and 2 kids. That the standard that he maintains when he looks at his wife, not in a dictatorial way, but in a leadership manner, when he looks at his wife and his 2 children, hey, there's a standard here for this family, and we're going to maintain that standard. And that's accountability and responsibility. He's being accountable to himself, and he's being responsible to his wife and his 2 kids. It just oozes, man.
Well, the responsible man or woman, but again, we're talking about men, makes his community better. He makes the people around him better. He makes the job better. It's just somebody that just contributes. In my experience, the responsible person just contributes more to everything around them and just makes it better for everybody else.
I agree. That's as good. That's as well said as can be.
I guess the last thing I would say about this is, responsibility isn't what you carry for yourself. I think we said it at the beginning. It's what you do for other people. It's what other people can count on you for. It's what other people can see and look up to and say, that's who I want to be like. And if you can be that kind of person, you're doing it right. Accountability and responsibility. You said this in the last episode, I think we talked about. You can't be accountable without responsibility, and you can't be responsible without accountability. They're kissing cousins.
Yeah, they are as close as you can have.
There's other aspects of pillars, if you will, of leadership, of being successful, and they each have their own little pillar. But man, these two, I think maybe they're they're sharing the same support beam to hold themselves up because they are so closely related, but yet they're so different at the same time. And I don't know if we can explain it. I'm sure we can explain it better than we have, but I hope people are able to understand that there is a big difference between the two, and there's so much alike. It's frightening because I don't know how you can be so different and so alike at the same time. I would say this. I would say if ask the people around you, just ask them if they think you're a responsible person. Uh, ask a kid. Ask a kid that's old enough to understand what responsibility is. You'll probably get the real truth out of them. But I think ask people around you. Hey, do you think I'm very responsible? See what you get. You might be surprised. You might be surprised in a good way too, that they say, yeah, I think you're very responsible. So just a little exercise for the week. What do you have, Sean?
Well, I'm going to give you the same answer, and it's a boring answer, but I'm going to give you the same answer I give for everything. The first person that you have to deal with, and you have to give that person an honest assessment, and you have to, based on the honest assessment, then you have to make changes and revamp the system. Is the person in the mirror? That's the first person. If you're not willing to be honest and truly assess yourself of where you're at on the metric of are you accountable? Are you responsible? Do you even in yourself see any type of leadership qualities? Until you're able to do that, when you think you're crushing it, are you really crushing it? Because if you were being honest with yourself, you would probably be able to pick yourself apart on, man, I screwed that up, or man, I sucked there, or man, I could have done that a lot better. Man, I wish I'd have handled that conversation better, whatever. You're always looking to improve yourself. So that would be my challenge, is the same challenge I had last week for accountability, is with the things that I'm responsible for, not accountable for, but the things that I'm responsible for, what grade do I give myself? If you're an A, you're prideful. I ain't even listening to you because you're just prideful. So what grade are you giving yourself? Are you a B? Are you a B minus? Are you a D plus? Are you just a flag? And then go from there. Self-assess on a responsibility metric. Take A out of the equation. From a B to an F, where are you? And be honest. And then go to work. So that's my challenge.
Yeah, and I'm going to add a little bit to that. Be humble enough to, if you know you're not a responsible person, if you know it's a challenge for you, be humble enough to seek out ways to be more responsible. Start with the little things. If it is as small as picking up the newspaper every day that you get delivered, if you still get a newspaper delivered, if it's as responsible enough, picking up the branches out of the yard,
brushing your teeth.
Brushing your teeth. You just had to make me laugh on that one, didn't
no,
you?
But it's shocking to me how many people you walk past on a daily basis, and you wonder, when is the last time this person actually took hygiene seriously? And you don't want to do it in a judge. I'm not telling you to be a judge. That's totally wrong. Don't be judgy. But seriously, you see people all the time, and I'm not talking about homeless people. I'm talking about people that, have homes and have cars, and you're like, yo, bro, there's this crazy creation a long time ago called a comb.
Well, it's true. Yeah, and I laugh. It just sounded funny coming out. But I think if you're not a responsible first person, you're challenged with all sorts of things. So be humble enough to understand that about yourself, like Sean was saying. But also find something to be responsible for every day. Every day. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just some one thing. Start there. Hey, Sean, thanks for the conversation. I hope we explained the difference between accountability and responsibility. I hope we gave some good information. It's at least clear up here. Now, I don't know if I was responsible enough to make it clear out here. I hope I was. Thanks for joining us tonight. This is Dad's Place, Men Who Step Up.